Before I tell you how close I came to losing everything, my business, my future, the life I'd spent a decade building, let me start with the moment I realized the man who once kissed my forehead in the mornings was perfectly willing to destroy me with a single phone call. It was a Monday, one of those painfully normal Mondays where nothing feels special enough to remember until something happens that changes your entire understanding of a person. I was in my office, drinking bad coffee from a paper cup, reviewing inventory for the week. My business wasn't huge, but it was honest work. A specialty cleaning company, contracts with offices, medical clinics, a few restaurants, nothing glamorous, but I'd built it from nothing, no loans, no investors, just sweat, sleep deprivation, and the kind of stubborn hope you only find in immigrants who know they can't afford to fail. My phone buzzed. Blocked number. I almost ignored it, but I answered. And that's when I heard the voice. "Is this Mr. Alvarez?" It wasn't a question. It was confirmation. "Yes," I said slowly. "This is Officer Collins with U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement. We have some questions regarding an ongoing investigation. Please make yourself available today." I froze. Not because I had anything to hide, but because anyone who wasn't born here knows what that name can do to the body. It doesn't matter how clean your record is. Ice is like thunder. Even if it's far away, the sound shakes you. My hands went cold. My stomach dropped. And my first thought wasn't fear. It was confusion. "An investigation?" I asked. "About what?" But the line went dead. For a long moment, I just sat there, staring at my reflection in the blank screen of my phone. I'd never broken a law in my life. Paid taxes with an I-10 from the day I set foot here. Filed paperwork on time. Renewed everything. I played the game exactly the way the rulebook demanded. But someone had pointed ice at me, and I had a name in mind before my next breath. His name was Jason, my ex, my former business partner, and the biggest mistake I ever let into my life. People think monsters announce themselves with red flags, glowing eyes, or snarled teeth. But Jason didn't snarl, not at first. He smiled. He charmed. He told jokes that made people lean in. He read people the way a locksmith understands locks, not to open them gently, but to learn how to pick them. We met at a trade show I could barely afford to attend. He was smooth, confident, quick with compliments. "You've built something real," he told me. "Most people give up long before they get to where you are." It felt good to hear it. It felt even better to believe someone finally saw me. We dated for a while, a year, then 2. And somewhere along the line, he convinced me to let him help with the business. He had marketing experience, he said. Connections, he said. A vision, he said. What he actually had was access. Access to client lists. Access to financials. Access to my trust. Looking back, the signs were there. The subtle digs. The casual suggestions that maybe I shouldn't be the face of my own company. "That accent makes clients nervous," he'd say with a laugh, like it was a joke. Or, "If ICE ever audits your industry, people like you get hit first. You need someone like me to keep things stable." I brushed it off. I didn't know yet. But now I was sitting in my office with an ICE officer's voice ringing in my skull and the bitter taste of betrayal flooding my mouth. Because Jason was the only person who ever threatened immigration in an argument. He was the only one who knew how much fear that word carried. And he was the only one who had something to gain if I disappeared. Ownership, full control. The business I built handed to him by default, not legally, not ethically, but practically. Remove me. And he got everything. I grabbed my coat, locked the office behind me, and drove home faster than I should have. My thoughts were a storm behind my eyes, loud, rapid, dangerous. When I reached my apartment, there was no mail from ICE. No officers waiting, but there was something, a voicemail from a number I didn't recognize. I pressed play. A man's voice, steady, official, filled the room. Mr. Alvarez, this is regarding the investigation initiated by an anonymous tip. We need you to confirm your presence at the listed business address. Please call back. Anonymous tip. That was it. That was the phrase that made everything click into place. Jason had done it. He'd weaponized the same system that terrified me most. And the worst part, this wasn't carelessness, wasn't anger, wasn't impulsive. This was planned, cold, calculating, purposeful. He wanted me gone. He wanted the business, the contracts, the accounts I nurtured for years, the reputation I built from dirt. But he didn't know something that would eventually cost him everything. He thought ICE would destroy me, but ICE found something interesting about him instead. And that was the beginning of his downfall. Not loud, not dramatic, just the first faint crack in the ice beneath his feet. And I already knew this. I wasn't going to fall through it. The first thing I did was sit down, not because I wanted to, but because my legs stopped trusting the floor. There are certain moments in life where your body knows something before your mind catches up, where fear hits the nerves first, and logic has to work its way through the panic, inch by inch. I sat there, staring at the wall, listening to the last seconds of that voicemail echo in my head. Anonymous tip. Those 2 words had teeth. I replayed the message once, twice, 3 times, not because I needed clarity, but because I needed the reminder. This wasn't random. This wasn't fate. This was him. Jason had pulled the pin and dropped the grenade, and now he was waiting for me to blow up. But something inside me, something small but stubborn, whispered, "He thinks you're the same person he used to control." He was wrong. I stood up, grabbed my binder, the same one I'd used to track every invoice, every client contract, every permit renewal, and started pulling files. Because if ICE was coming for me, I needed to be ready. Not scared, not hiding. Ready. I drove to the business address they mentioned in the voicemail, walked into my own office like it was a courtroom, and waited. At exactly 3:17 p.m., 2 plainclothes ICE officers walked in. The older one, Collins, flashed a badge. "Mr. Alvarez?" "Yes," I said. He nodded, professional but not hostile. The kind of neutral expression that could mean everything or nothing. "We received an anonymous report," he began. "We need to ask you some questions about your business operations." "Of course," I said. He blinked, surprised. Most people panic. Most people get flustered. Most people show fear. I wasn't most people, not anymore. I motioned to the conference table, and they followed me into the small room. I sat on one side. They sat on the other. Between us, I set down the binder, a thick one, organized, color-coded, ready. Officer Collins opened a file. "The report alleges," he began, "that you are employing undocumented workers, avoiding payroll taxes, paying cash under the table, and committing fraud through falsified invoices." I didn't flinch, because I knew something Jason didn't. My books were clean. "Is that so?" I said quietly. "It's our job to verify," he replied. "Are you willing to cooperate?" I opened the binder like a surgeon preparing tools. "Yes," I said. "Let's start with payroll. I slid over the quarterly tax filings, the state wage reports, the IRS deposits, the payroll provider receipts, and the employee verification logs. The younger officer raised his eyebrows. This is thorough. It has to be, I said. Small businesses don't get forgiven for mistakes. They nodded. Subcontractors, the other officer asked. I handed over the 1099s. Vendor invoices? Handed them over. Permit renewals? Binder tab 4. Insurance certificates? Binder tab 6. With each document they reviewed, their expressions changed, subtly, but enough. Suspicion eased. Professional caution softened. Curiosity grew. Officer Collins closed the binder halfway through. Mr. Alvarez, he said slowly, you're more organized than most businesses we see. I have to be, I repeated. He flipped through the anonymous report again. His jaw tightened. The tip was extremely specific, he said. Details about your payroll schedule, client list, even your storage unit. Whoever made this report knew the inner workings of your business. I leaned forward. And whoever made this report, I said calmly, knew that a visit like this could destroy me. The younger officer looked up sharply. Do you have reason to believe someone filed this maliciously? I thought of Jason, his laugh, his helping hands, his whispered warnings, his obsession with leverage, his need for control. Yes, I said, I do. Officer Collins exchanged a slow, thoughtful glance with his partner. We'll continue our review, he said, but I'll be transparent with you. Nothing we've seen so far supports the allegations. I nodded. I appreciate that. We will need access to your company bank statements, he added. Voluntarily, for now. I pulled up the digital copies on my laptop and slid it toward them. The younger officer blinked. You've already pulled them together? They're in monthly folders, I said, color-coded, PDFs and CSVs. He stared like I'd just solved a Rubik's Cube without looking. They scanned the files silently for a few minutes. And then Officer Collins closed the laptop, folded his hands, and said a single line that flipped the entire investigation upside down. Mr. Alvarez, do you know a man named Jason Miller? My pulse jumped. I kept my expression neutral. Yes, I said, we used to run the business together. We're no longer involved. He listed himself as your co-owner on the anonymous tip. I felt something inside me sharpen. Because Jason was not a co-owner. He was not an employee. He was not on any paperwork. He had no shares, no ties, no legal claim. He was nothing. Officer Collins continued. He also claimed that he left because you were running illegal operations and he wanted no part of it. But he opened his folder again. We ran his name. He paused for effect. And we found something interesting. My breath stilled. He slid a sheet of paper across the table, a printout from their records, a file on Jason, a file I never expected. Your ex-partner, Collins said carefully, is under ongoing investigation for identity fraud, tax evasion, and falsifying employment documents, including some connected to your business address. For a moment, everything in the room went silent. The clock, the HVAC, my heartbeat, everything. What? I whispered. They nodded grimly. If he used your business address on falsified documents, Collins said, he may have attempted to tie you to his activities. The younger officer leaned forward. And if those connections are deliberate, that's not a tip. It's an attempted setup. My breath finally came back, sharp, deep, unstoppable. Jason hadn't just tried to get me deported. He tried to frame me for his own crimes. He tried to bury me under paperwork that belonged to him. And now ICE wasn't investigating me. They were investigating him. Officer Collins stood. "We'll need to follow up with you," he said. "But at this point, it appears you're the victim in this case, not the suspect." Victim, the right word, but not the right ending. Because standing there, watching those officers walk out with a folder full of Jason's lies, something settled in my chest. Not fear, not relief, resolve. He had tried to end my life here, my business, my future, everything I built. And he thought the system would do it for him. He didn't know that the system had receipts, and it was my turn to serve the coldest revenge of my life. Officer Collins' car pulled away from the curb, and for a long moment I just stood there in the doorway of my business, hands still clutching the door frame. The street looked the same, cars passing, people walking, life continuing like nothing had changed, but everything had. Jason had thrown the biggest weapon he had at me, immigration, and it had backfired so hard that federal agents were now looking at him instead of me. The strange thing about moments like this is that victory never feels like victory at first. It feels like numbness, like your brain is trying to reboot itself after almost being hit by a truck. I finally stepped back into my office, locked the door, and exhaled so slowly it felt like air I'd been holding for years. But relief didn't stay long, because beneath it was anger, not rage, not the loud punch-a-wall type of anger, something quieter, more focused, colder, the kind of anger that makes you see the world very clearly. Jason had tried to get me deported, not out of fear, not out of misunderstanding, but out of greed. And next to that greed, something worse. The belief that I didn't belong here, that everything I built was temporary, that my roots could be ripped up with one anonymous phone call, that I was disposable, that he could take what was mine simply because he was born on the right side of a border. And that's the kind of thinking that deserves consequences, real consequences, permanent consequences. Because he hadn't just crossed a line, he'd erased it, spit on it, and dared me to say anything. So I did what I do best. I got organized. I pulled out the second binder I kept locked in my desk drawer, the one I used to track every suspicious thing Jason had ever done while we were together. Not because I'd expected this, but because people like him leave footprints. They always do. And if ICE had already found something interesting, I had a feeling I could find something devastating. The first few tabs were small things, late payments, strange cash withdrawals when he was helping with bookkeeping, 3 client checks that never made it into the business account during the time he was helping me organize my finances. I turned the page, tab 7, the one I never talked about, our breakup. Jason hadn't taken it well. He cried, he begged, he accused me of ruining his life. But after the crying came anger, real anger, and that's when he said something I had written down word for word. "If you think you can just walk away and keep everything, you're delusional. You only have a business because I helped you. I can take it away just as easily." At the time, I thought it was just bitterness. Words said in the heat of a breakup. I didn't realize it was a blueprint. At the bottom of the binder was something I never wanted to think about again, a USB drive he left behind by accident. At the time, I plugged it in to see if there were files I needed to return. What I found instead made my skin crawl. Screenshots, copies of applications, contracts, IDs with mismatched numbers, documents labeled things like draft social and tax fix final. Some were blanks, some were filled in, All of them were suspicious. I had backed them up, then locked the drive away, then convinced myself it meant nothing. But now it meant everything, because ICE had already found identity fraud connected to him. So I did the one thing that Jason never expected me to do. I called Officer Collins back. He answered immediately. "Mr. Alvarez?" "I found something," I said, "and I think you're going to want to see it." There was a pause. "How soon can you come in?" I looked at the USB drive in my hand. "I'm already on my way." The Icefield office looks exactly like you'd expect. Neutral walls, neutral carpets, neutral faces. Everything designed to make you feel like you've done something wrong, even if you haven't. But I walked in with my chin up. The receptionist took my name. Officer Collins came out within minutes. We sat in a small interview room, the kind with a metal table and one too bright light overhead. I slid the binder across the table, then the USB drive. "I didn't realize what he was doing at the time," I said, "but now I see it clearly." Officer Collins put on gloves, plugged the USB into a secure laptop, and began scrolling. He didn't react at first. Federal agents have poker faces carved from stone. But then, the first eyebrow lift. Then a slow exhale. Then he called another agent into the room, the younger officer from before. They both stared at the screen. "This isn't just document fraud," Collins said quietly. "This is production." Another officer walked in, a supervisor. She looked at the screen for 10 seconds before saying, "Where did you say you got this?" "It belonged to my ex," I said. "He worked with me for a while. He had access to the business. I think he used my company to look legitimate." And then came the question that changed Jason's fate. "Mr. Alvarez," the supervisor asked, "would you be willing to give a statement under oath?" I didn't hesitate. "Yes," I said. "I want to help, because this wasn't revenge anymore. This was justice." It took 2 hours to give the full statement. They asked about how we met, how he got access, what he handled, what he saw, any suspicious behavior, every time he mentioned shortcuts, every time he warned me about immigration audits, every time he implied my status made me vulnerable. I told them everything, not emotionally, not angrily, just fact by fact. Because the truth didn't need my feelings. The truth was enough. At the end, the supervisor closed her folder. "This is very helpful," she said, "but before we proceed further, we need to ask something delicate." I nodded. "Is there any chance," she said gently, "that you might still be involved with this man in any way?" "No," I said quickly. "Absolutely not. We haven't spoken in months. And he only contacted me recently to check up on the business, which I now understand was him probing." She nodded. "Good, because..." She exchanged a glance with the officers. "We need you to be aware. If he committed fraud using your business address or information, he may already assume we're on to him." "What does that mean?" I asked. "It means," she said slowly, "he might run." Something inside me twisted. I didn't want him gone, not yet. I wanted him held accountable for trying to steal my business, for trying to weaponize ICE against me, for thinking I was disposable, for using my identity as his cover. But the supervisor continued, "In cases like this, we move fast. We'll need to ask you not to contact him." I almost laughed. "Believe me," I said, "I won't." When the meeting ended, Officer Collins walked me out. Just before I reached the exit, he said, "For what it's worth, you did the right thing, and you might want to prepare yourself." "For what?" He looked me in the eye. "When someone files a malicious immigration report, They expect the target to go down quietly. They don't expect the truth to come out. And when it does, he hesitated. They usually get desperate. I swallowed. What does desperate mean? It means he might try something else, something stupid. And what should I do if he does? His answer was immediate. You call us immediately, because Mr. Alvarez, whether you believe it or not, you are not the one under investigation here. Then he added one last line. He is. That night, for the first time in weeks, I slept with my phone on the pillow beside me. Not because I was scared, but because I was waiting. Because everything inside me knew Jason wasn't going to stay quiet for long. Men like him never do. They lash out, they scramble, they try to regain control, and they always make one fatal mistake. I didn't know when, I didn't know how, but I knew it was coming. And when it did, it would be the moment his entire world cracked open, and ICE wouldn't be the only agency interested in what spilled out. I didn't have to wait long. 3 days after I submitted the statement and handed over that USB, my phone started ringing at 6:14 in the morning. Not buzzing, ringing, loud, insistent, panic-inducing. I shot up in bed. Unknown number. I answered, heart pounding. Mr. Alvarez? A clipped voice said. This is Detective Harris with the Financial Crimes Unit. We need to speak with you immediately. Financial crimes. My blood ran cold. What happened? I asked. There was an incident early this morning involving a Mr. Jason Miller. We need you to come down to the station. What kind of incident? A long pause. We should speak in person. My chest tightened. If they wouldn't tell me over the phone, it wasn't good. I dressed quickly, barely remembering how to tie my shoes, and drove to the station, my mind cycling through everything that could have gone wrong. Had Jason run? Destroyed evidence? Done something reckless? By the time I arrived, I'd imagined 20 worst-case scenarios, but none of them came close to the truth. I was led into an interview room. Detective Harris entered, mid-40s, no nonsense, eyes sharp as glass. He sat across from me, opened a folder, and said, Before we begin, I need to confirm some details about your connection to Mr. Miller. I already spoke to ICE. Yes, he said. We got their file this morning. He slid a photo across the table, a picture of Jason, in handcuffs, eyes wild, hair disheveled, mouth twisted in anger. My breath caught. Jason was arrested at 4:23 a.m., the detective said. He attempted to flee during a traffic stop. Officers found counterfeit documents in his car, multiple sets. I swallowed. Documents like... He handed me the inventory list. Fake driver's licenses, fake Social Security cards, tax documents with altered numbers, a forged green card, a forged work permit. My stomach twisted, but that wasn't the worst part. Officer also found, the detective continued, a folder containing your business name, your EIN number, and several documents filled out with your business address listed as the employer. My jaw clenched. He had been preparing to frame me. Again, deeper this time. And that's not all, the detective said. We also found a printed ICE report, the same one that initiated their investigation into you. Jason had highlighted sections with notes like, he'll break and wait for panic. Something sour rose in my throat. He wanted to watch it happen, not from a distance, up close, like it was entertainment. Detective Harris continued flipping through the file. Based on ICE's ongoing investigation and the materials recovered this morning, we believe Mr. Miller has been operating a small-scale identity fraud ring. He's been producing false documents, and using legitimate businesses, like yours, to make them appear real. I nodded slowly. And we also have reason to believe, he added, that he's been using immigration threats as a form of extortion. My pulse hammered in my ears. You said there was an incident, I whispered. What happened? He looked at me steadily. When officers attempted to arrest him, he resisted. He tried to destroy some of the documents by lighting them on fire with a cigarette lighter. In the struggle, he cut his hand on broken glass and shouted that everything was your fault. My breath hitched. He mentioned you by name multiple times, the detective said, yelled that you ruined his life and that he had one last plan to take you down. A chill ran down my spine. He had your address in his car, Mr. Alvarez. Something inside me went still. Not fear, not shock, recognition. Officer Collins was right. Desperate men get stupid. And desperation was all Jason had left. Do I need protection? I asked. Detective Harris folded his hands. As a precaution, he said, we're placing a temporary patrol watch on your home and business. Mr. Miller is currently being held without bail due to the fraud charges and risk of flight. I nodded, relief mixing with dread. What happens now? I asked. He exhaled. Now, he said, we unravel everything. For the next 2 weeks, ICE and financial crimes worked together like two sides of the same blade. And Jason, he started cutting himself with every move he'd ever hidden. Turns out he wasn't just committing identity fraud. He had filed fake tax returns, claimed employment at my business to access benefits, used my EIN number on multiple fraudulent forms, taken out a small predatory loan using my business address as proof of residency, tried to report me to ICE as retaliation, attempted to manipulate immigration officers, sold counterfeit IDs to people using my company as the legitimate employer, submitted false payroll records showing me paying people I'd never met. Every crime he committed, he tied to my business. Every crime he committed, he left a trail. And now that trail was being tracked by people who didn't play games. During week 3, Officer Collins called. We're preparing charges, he said, but we need one final thing from you. What is it? A recorded statement confirming that Mr. Miller never had legal authority, ownership, or employment at your company. I almost laughed. Believe me, I said, I can confirm that. When the recording was done, Collins paused. There's something else you should know. I braced myself. When ICE first launched the investigation, he said, he assumed you'd be detained, possibly even deported. That's why he listed himself as co-owner. He hoped he could step in the moment you were out of the picture. Take over the business, I said softly. Yes, Collins said, but the moment he realized you weren't going anywhere, everything escalated. I nodded. Of course it escalated. He thought I'd break. He thought I'd run. He thought ICE was a weapon he could control. He never expected ICE to turn around and look directly at him. The next twist came out of nowhere. My office phone rang on a Thursday afternoon. It was a number I didn't recognize. This is Attorney Linda Morris, the voice said. I'm representing a client who was deceived by a man named Jason Miller. I tightened my grip on the phone. How? I asked. He told her he was the co-owner of your business, she said gently. Told her he could get her a work permit. She paid him $5,000 for processing. He never filed anything, and she's not the only victim. My heart sank. How many? I asked. As of this morning, she said. 6. I closed my eyes. He wasn't just trying to ruin me. He was using me, using my company, using my credibility, using my identity, to exploit people like me, immigrants, people who didn't know the system, who trusted someone who spoke confidently, who believed a man who said he had connections. I felt something burning behind my ribs. Anger. Real anger. Not just for myself, for them, for every person who handed him money out of hope, fear, or desperation. Can you connect them with the investigators? I asked. I already have, she said quietly. But they asked me to reach out. Some victims feel ashamed. They shouldn't, I said. This wasn't their fault. They know that, she replied. Hearing it from you will help. I exhaled. I'm willing to help in any way. And I meant it, because Jason didn't just betray me. He preyed on people who trusted him. That's not just illegal, it's inhuman. The trial came faster than I expected. Jason faced federal identity fraud charges, tax evasion, attempted forgery, possession of counterfeit documents, filing false immigration reports, attempting to frame a private citizen, attempted extortion, abusing federal systems, resisting arrest, and violations related to immigration fraud involving multiple victims. His lawyer, a court-appointed one now because his assets were frozen, tried every angle. He didn't know what he was doing. He was stressed. He was helping people. He made a mistake. But none of that mattered, because ICE had the USB. Financial Crimes had the documents from his car. The DA had the identity fraud victims. And I had the receipts that tracked every lie. At one point during testimony, his attorney tried to suggest that maybe I had been involved too. Officer Collins shut that down with one sentence. Mr. Alvarez is the reason we uncovered the full extent of the fraud. Jason looked at me across the courtroom. Not with hatred, not even with anger, with fear, real fear. The kind of fear that comes when a predator realizes their prey survived and learned how to bite back. In the end, the judge gave the verdict with a steady voice. Jason Miller, you are hereby sentenced to 4 years in federal prison, followed by supervised release. You will pay restitution to the victims of your fraud, and you are prohibited from contacting Mr. Alvarez in any way. 4 years. Silence fell. Jason's mouth hung open. He shouted something, incoherent, panicked, but officers were already pulling him away. I stayed seated, calm, still, grounded, because revenge isn't the explosion. It's the aftermath, watching the dust settle and realizing, you survived. He didn't. Outside the courtroom, Officer Collins shook my hand. You handled yourself well, he said. You stayed calm through a process that breaks most people. I didn't have a choice, I said. He gave a small smile. Everyone has a choice. You just made the right one. As he walked away, I realized something. Jason never understood me. Not really. He thought people like me run, hide, panic. He didn't know that people like me survive by planning, by documenting, by preparing, by staying quiet until the right moment. He thought I would break. Instead, I built the one thing he never expected, a case against him, piece by piece, paper by paper, receipt by receipt, cold, silent, patient, until the truth was too heavy for him to outrun. He tried to use ICE to destroy me, but ICE found something interesting about him instead, and that was the day he learned something important. You can't steal a life someone built with their bare hands, and you definitely can't destroy someone who already knows how to rebuild. If you want more stories where villains make one fatal mistake, where the people they tried to crush rise up with truth and receipts, and where cold revenge hits harder than karma ever could, subscribe. Because this is just the beginning.